Well, it's Heart Week here at WHDT. If you're just now joining us, we've talked with several medical experts throughout the week, and we're looking for creative ways to stay fit, stay active, most of all, to keep that heart pumping and in good shape. Right now, Dr. Jonathan Vitale joins us in our Chicago studios to help to shed some light on another one of those C words, cholesterol. Dr. Jonathan, great to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
And great to have you. Now, in my mind, cholesterol and foods that taste good, they all go hand in hand. I mean, am I right? There's eggs, steak, seafood, all these things. I guess I've sort of tuned out a lot of those warnings in the past about cholesterol because, after all, I'm young and I like those foods a lot. But I saw this recent Harvard study. Maybe you can help clear some of this up. It caught my eye there. It appears they sort of changed their tune on cholesterol, perhaps, saying the new dietary guidelines could soon be changing.
That's right. So cholesterol has always been very controversial. And as you know, we've been focused on it for, the past 40, 50 years. We've been told you can't eat that egg yolk, And so what we've recently found in this new research that's happening is we found that we're paying a little bit too much attention to the dietary intake of cholesterol, and that after all, maybe that specific number of milligrams of cholesterol that you're ingesting in your diet may not be as important as we once thought it was. Now, this definitely does not mean that this is an excuse to go out and start eating the 5 or 6 egg omelet every day. That's definitely not what it means. But what it does mean is that we need to start paying more attention not only to exactly the cholesterol that we're eating, but also to the other foods which have equally or worse effects on our health, like sugar, salt, and saturated fats.
Okay.
So that's really the take-home point from the new cholesterol debate that's been going on.
And I'm wondering if this might be another factor in this conversation as well. We've always heard about the risks of atherosclerosis, plaque buildup in the arteries. Okay, that's obviously a problem for the heart. If there's that traffic buildup, the clogging in the arteries makes it harder for the heart to pump the blood through this body. What's a greater factor in plaque building up? Would you say fatty foods, or like you just mentioned, the harsh sugar granules, maybe the salts that can maybe leave small cuts or abrasions inside the artery itself?
Yeah, I mean, the answer to that is they all impact it.
Okay.
But what's important to realize, though, Mark, is you have to know what the difference is. With cholesterol, we're always talking about LDLs, or the bad cholesterol. That's the waxy substance that actually coats your arteries and makes you more likely to have brittle arteries, or a piece which could break off and cause a heart attack or a stroke.
Okay.
Right. And then when we're talking about saturated fats, those are found in animal proteins and dairy. And what that does, that actually makes those LDLs worse. So that also has that impact. And then you just mentioned salt. What that does is that makes our blood pressure higher, which makes our arteries more brittle, which also makes us more likely to have cardiovascular disease such as heart attack, stroke, or high blood pressure. So really all of the food that we eat is important to our cardiovascular health. And that's the message about the cholesterol, that yes, cholesterol is important, but it's certainly not the most important, and we've almost been paying too much attention to it in our diet.
Okay.
When we should be focused on limiting other foods as well.
So we've touched on cholesterol. You mentioned LDL. We've talked about atherosclerosis.
That's
Lots
right.
of big words, but I'm going to throw another one at you here. I went and did some medical research, okay? And by that I mean I went to WebMD.
Okay.
All right. Now
as most people do.
Right. So you can help me clear this up at greater length. But it says high triglycerides are also bad and even linked to CAD, coronary artery disease. How are triglycerides different, or how do they vary from cholesterol, and how should people really kind of understand those two words?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Triglycerides is fat in the blood that's mostly from our diet. Okay, so so triglycerides is often from eating a diet that's high in saturated fats. And actually, when you go to the doctor and you get your blood tested, you'll see what your triglyceride level is and what your LDL level is, in addition to your healthy cholesterol, which is HDL. And it's important to know that triglycerides and LDLs, so triglycerides and the bad cholesterol, it's a little confusing because they both add to your risk for heart disease, but the triglycerides more so comes from some of the sugars that you eat in your diet. So there's a little bit better correlation with triglycerides and the really sugary foods or the high carbohydrate foods that you eat in your diet. And both numbers are important for your health.
Okay, would you say that perhaps the younger demographic or the patients that you encounter are probably less likely to track these numbers until maybe they have a health scare?
Definitely, and that's a good point, because that emphasizes preventive health in our country, and people need to be going to their doctor, especially when they're over 30, to be getting their cholesterol checked regularly in order to help prevent these things. You know, another thing, Mark, that's really important that people need to realize is a lot of cholesterol is genetics. So some folks may have a really healthy lifestyle, they may eat great, they may exercise, but they still have poor cholesterol, and they would never know it, you know, and they can get, you know, an early heart attack or what have you. Whereas some folks don't eat well, they don't exercise, and they're lucky to have very good cholesterol. So it's a silent killer, and so it's important to go to your doctor and to have these preventive checkups to be screened for high cholesterol.
And certainly heart failure, heart disease, one of the leading killers, the leading killer in this country, a very important matter. And we're talking about the heart here today as well. All week long we've been talking about heart health, but let's shift gears for kind of a minute. I mean, we often link cholesterol to heart health, but does bad cholesterol somehow impact any other parts of our body at the same time?
Well, sure. I mean, cholesterol is going to be not just your heart, but also your entire cardiovascular system, right? It's going to be lining your arteries throughout your body. It's going to be raising your blood pressure, which can impact every organ in your body. Everything from your kidneys to your intestines to every other organ in your body is going to be impacted by that. You can also have worse other disease processes like diabetes, which are going to actually be much worsened by high cholesterol, because diabetes already makes your arteries more brittle. So it's important to realize that cholesterol has to do with almost every organ in your body. And that's why we talk about the heart, but remember what the heart does. It pumps blood to every organ in the body. So it's very important for that reason. And
not to oversimplify, but I've heard someone say before that we are what we eat, and in a lot of ways that's very true. What's the big takeaway here? I mean, first, we want to look at something we can do. You mentioned, I like the illustrative word you used, the waxy type composition of bad cholesterol. Can you put that in a food terminology, something that a person might be prone to eat on a daily basis? And what's one of the first things that someone should do, whether it's removing something or adding something else to their diet to improve their cholesterol intake?
You know, in terms of cholesterol intake, I think it's still important to understand that our body produces all the cholesterol we need, so we don't really need excess cholesterol. But in terms of a diet, what you're eating, really it's just important to be eating a variety of foods from a variety of food groups, focusing on your vegetables, on fruits, on lean proteins, right? Also fish, poultry, and plants, to make sure that you eat a variety of foods. And you're not just focused on, as so many Americans are, on just animal proteins or red meat or dairy, which are healthy in moderation, but do have higher levels of saturated fat and cholesterol. But in terms of things like eggs, we now know from the cholesterol debate, it's probably okay to have an egg every day, you know, with the yolk, but just not in excess.
That's welcome news, at least for myself, for sure.
Me too.
Dr. Jonathan, thanks for checking in with us. We'll check back in with you a little bit later on this hour.
Okay, thank you so much, Mark.
All right, folks. Up next, Amanda Gabriel with Money Matters. Stay tuned.